Welcome everyone to this panel called Bridging TV and Broadband, Strategic Relationships, Advertising Technology and Content. Not my abstract, didn't write it, so I think we're going to divert from that a little bit because it seems a little bit broad, but with the panelists that we have here, I think that you'll find that the expertise involved will more than make up for that because we're going to let them kind of get some of their own messaging across. My name is Nash Parker. I'm the Director of Media Strategy at Alcatel-Lucent, a telecommunications equipment provider. I do most of the engagement with many of the companies that are here on the panels. I'm the replacement for Derek Kuhn, who couldn't make it. And I'm going to start by allowing the panelists themselves to do intros because they know themselves so much better. And maybe we'll start with Todd and work our way back.
Okay, hi, my name is Todd Krieger. We love the afternoon panel. We'll try and keep you awake. So I work at Denew, which is a very special little company inside Publicis. It is a futures consultancy, or as my boss likes to say, a think-do company. We work primarily with branded marketers to help them figure out how to navigate the very, very confusing landscape. As Nash said, it's a time of change, and even our panel name of Bridging Broadband and TV, it's sort of, what does that even mean? And I love that actually the panel originally was like, 2008 is the year of broadband, which I think we say that every year without fail.
This time we really mean it.
well, 2007 was the year of online video, which was kind of sort of maybe. But what Denew does is we work with branded marketers, and then in my role, I work with content companies to help them figure out how to navigate the digital landscape. And myself, I'm very focused on trying to figure out new ways for content companies and advertisers to work together. So I'm very, very focused on what is happening in online video, and I think it's a truly dynamic time. I mean, we look, Hulu launched yesterday, Juiced is doing March Madness, YouTube just opened up some APIs, so there couldn't be a better time to talk about how does technology, advertising, and content all work together, so I think we'll have some fun this afternoon.
Hi, I'm Tara Matra. I work for TiVo. You probably know TiVo best for being a DVR, and probably the best brand of DVR. But I also work on an area that is more relevant for this conversation, which is broadband delivered content directly to the set-top box via TiVo to your television. Todd mentioned YouTube APIs. We just announced as well that we will be making YouTube available on TiVo. So our real focus at TiVo today is to not only be a digital video recorder, but we also say the DVR is for digital video receiver or even digital video retriever, because we're working with all of the content providers that, whether it's broadcast or cable networks or companies like Amazon Unbox, to make content available both for free and on a paid basis, with the goal of really allowing consumers to combine all of their viewing options in one user interface, one remote, one menu. And so that's where we're focused.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Leese. I guess I'm one of the content panelists here. We're in the content business at CBS, and I run a division for the corporation that focuses on the 29 television stations that we own, many of them in our top markets. And what we're doing over the past 4 years is actually making tremendous headway in converting all of our TV stations to expand and distribute original and their core asset business to all these new distribution platforms. It's a real major sea change in just the workflow and the efforts of even selling traditional and moving over to digital. But that's what our group is charged with. Totally in line with the corporate strategies for distribution and syndication. And it's been a real terrific ride for the past 4 years as we've really built up a terrific audience that we never had before off television. So hopefully we get into more of that.
Hello, my name is David Rips. I'm with the Media and Entertainment Practice of Deloitte Consulting out of Los Angeles. Primarily, I work with the largest studios and broadcasters. That was strange. And the kind of projects that we've been doing over the last couple of years are primarily around designing their new business models for defining how they're going to monetize their content in terms of both subscriptions and advertising, and different ways to do that and different ways of packaging content, as well as defining those business models in light of today's technologies and capabilities and the future. We're also creating a new framework, which we're going to be talking about in a couple months' time with all of you, hopefully, about what that future looks like. And in light of that, to help companies define their capabilities and the technology that they need to fit into that new world.
My name is Lisa Shaw. I'm from Bravo Media, which is a cable entertainment network owned by NBC Universal. And I oversee all the new media and digital strategy. So you're perhaps familiar with the network. We have shows like Project Runway, Top Chef, Real Housewives of Orange County now, Real Housewives of New York. And we're blessed with a really passionate, highly engaged audience who are quite tech savvy and really like to participate. And so, we've been charged with really getting them engaged on all levels, whether it be broadband, video, wireless, interactive TV, downloading, et cetera.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Forbes from a company called Capgemini. I'm based in the New York office where I'm a vice president within our media and entertainment division. Similarly with Deloitte, we do comparable work with most of the major studios and broadcasters. So some of my clients would be Viacom, News Corp, and Time Warner, helping them, again, understand business models to market. Certainly the last kind of few months we've been spending a lot of time helping them better understand different models, whether that be transactional, subscription, or ad-supported. And so the last 18 months or so, we've been doing a lot of work around advanced advertising. So clearly, a lot of the topics today is square where a lot of our clients are at, which essentially says they have a big traditional business, whether that be broadcast or otherwise, and how best do I replicate that success online? How better do I target my programming and my advertising? So we'll spend some time hopefully talking about that over the next few minutes.
Okay. So because the abstract was pretty abstract, we kind of talked amongst ourselves that we would start with trying to find out, what did the audience expect to get out of the panel. So a little survey time. How many people are in the advertising industry? Okay. Any broadcasters or programming? Analysts? Well, that's good to know. I won't. Okay, well, why don't we start, the way we were trying to tie this up was to start with the broadcast and the TV experience and kind of go through the advertising and try to make a bridge. So let's start with moving to Lisa. With broadband delivery and over-the-top style models, how do the content holders feel about this when you approach them and say, hey, I want to put all this content away from what would be maybe a traditional cable play onto sites? How do they feel about that?
Well, I think you just have to look at how the landscape has changed. I mean, when Bravo started, the broadband sites, BravoTV.com was really just a marketing extension. It was under the marketing head, and it was just kind of a brand extension. And the idea was just to get the word out about the shows. But increasingly now, we have heavy pressure to monetize and deliver revenues. And luckily, as we add more video, add more extensions, et cetera, the audience seems to be moving with us. So, for instance, I'll use them as a mobile example for Project Runway. We have a mobile fan club. So, you can sign up for kind of behind-the-scenes messages and downloadables. So we ask people, we start asking people questions like, what is there a question you want to ask Christian? We had 92% of our fan members respond. So that's the kind of level of engagement we've got. So increasingly, I would say, they're really stepping up to the plate. And the more things we seem to offer, the more things they seem to be interested. And we seem to have a lot of luck with the advertisers coming up to the plate as well. So for Project Runway, we had something called So Not Over, which was a broadband, online-only fashion show where you could vote about which contestant you thought. Because, in Project Runway, you don't actually get to vote yourself about who wins. So we had people allowed to vote about who they think should win on Project Runway on a mini fashion show that you could see only online. Once again, huge participation. So what we're trying to do is build brands that are additive to the TV program, but also can stand alone. So we've got broadband portals like Bravo for Foodies or Bravo for Style, which are, for instance, there's currently fashion shows sponsored by American Express from New York Fashion Week that have nothing to do with the show whatsoever. So, I think that the idea is to try to build strong brand extensions and also extend beyond that, and then extend beyond broadband into emerging media. So, for instance, right now, Top Chef started last night, and with Verizon, we've got an exclusive mobile challenge shot on video that's only available on Verizon. So that's a kind of partnership with advertisers where we're trying to give them something that has nothing to do really with it has to do with the program itself, but it's content that people seem to want that is completely separate from it.
Now, actually, I'm glad you brought up the mobile, because it might be a little self-serving, being that my company is heavily engaged in building networks that are going to bring multi-screen video delivery. But when you talk about that, it seems to be quite the success. And as most things that we've been seeing and doing in anything to do with digital Hollywood, it seems simple when you start, and then as you get into the business models, it gets more and more complex and more complicated and more layers. And so I'm going to switch now over to Jonathan and say, okay, it's great to say we're going to make this content available and we're going to deliver it over all these platforms, and we just finished a strike over that. But what's next? How do you see the revenue models and the business itself changing over this kind of bridging of delivery?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know.
Coming from, we also are very brand-centric, and we are a content company, and we're advertising supported in our traditional business on the heavy side. But the challenges start with the workflow. Traditionally, a lot of people think that, all the networks are going to do is take their television shows, or the TV stations are taking their TV shows and just putting them on the internet. That's part of the strategy, because for us, we can reach a tremendous audience that is now using the internet wireless for broadband, video, and audio, which is what we've been in the business of for 50 years. It's just another distribution channel for reaching audience that is not sitting in front of a TV set, which is essentially ad-supported. There is a real sea change that has to take place in our business that's beginning to happen now at the advertising planning and buying and executing point, where do you go to traditional advertisers and ask them to put 30-second spots on the internet? Is that the answer? Or do you reinvent new interstitial type of advertising opportunities along with content on the internet? These are the challenges we're facing every day, but we as an industry need to move this needle slowly. And the reason is because this is a multi-billion-dollar business, television, and we still can reach, at a network level, tens of millions of people in an instant. And the internet is so focused and so targeted today. And you take cable with, I turn on my cable TV and I've got 800 channels to choose from. And the old adage is that we all watch about 3 or 4 of those channels. The internet has got 1 million channels or more. Our focus really has to be on our content. The workflow of getting that content out over the internet, syndicating it, get away from the portal strategy, and bring advertisers along with our audience when we build our audiences. And that's what our strategy has been for 4 years. We're growing our audience significantly by double digits to triple digits each year over year. And now it's time, and we're making a tremendous headway in working with the ad agencies, the digital agencies and traditional agencies, to how do we actually give them what they're looking for in the audience, whether they're 10 minutes online with our product or 4 minutes online with our product. That's the challenge, and that's really what we're working with. I hope I answered your question. But you also talk about revenues. They're growing, and the industry itself needs to make some changes to actually figure out how do you target and how do you measure this audience so that the internet can be as big a cash cow someday, or at least an added business to what we do every day on the television side.
And Jonathan, if we can just add to that, I think one of the encouraging things about someone like Jonathan Leese, who's probably one of the more exposed or kind of encouraged to read to drive kind of movements of behaviors online but he is often the exception. Like, one of my favorite stats is you've got 8% of advertising spend is in digital channels, but 30% of US users' media time is online. So there's a big gap right now between where users are moving to and where the ad dollars are. And the unfortunate thing, therefore, is you've lots of stakeholder groups which will take time to convert or to move over. You mentioned the ad sales teams. These are people who for many, many years, and the ad agencies as well, who are very used to the established model, which is massive levels of dollars and many times more important. And so the transition, therefore, needs to be kind of sequenced over time. So you're not creating this sea change overnight, but you need to recognize that your consumers are moving more quickly than you are. So finding that right pace becomes massively important.
And I think Jonathan also said something interesting about workflow, and I would also touch on what Lisa was saying. So speaking from sort of an agency perspective, where Lisa's talking about multiple touch points in the way that Bravo is rolling out their brands is exactly what we tell our clients when they're thinking about how to market. Certainly today, we certainly don't think everything begins and ends with a 30-second spot. That was a long time ago. And the way that Lisa's talking about her brands and the brand extensions is very attractive to our clients so that they can touch people whenever, wherever, and in however they're doing it. And that's really the only way that you can get messaging across. And I think that one of the fallacies of when this panel's title is Bridging TV and Broadband, it's not really a bridge. It's like some people will participate in content on TV, some people will watch it online. You may do both, but there's actually not necessarily a fluid bridge that says it's all going to transition this way. But then going back to what Jonathan was saying about workflow, it's definitely a very crucial time right now where we're actually working with advertisers who they want to take their spots and just throw them online. And you'll find, and there was a panel earlier today, that if you throw pre-roll in front of a video, the consumer won't watch it. So you have to actually move along with the consumer and create inventory that maps to what the consumer expects online. And that's where some of the real disconnect comes in, and it's something to be mindful of, which is that you can't move what have been traditional advertising models into other forms because you'll actually lose a consumer in the process, and then nobody gets any of the revenue. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, especially in a world where, obviously in the TiVo world, you're accustomed to fast forwarding. That's probably one of the reasons you got a TiVo in the first place. What we're seeing is we're actually advising content distributors who are making the content available via broadband on TiVo when they're kind of negotiating with us to find out exactly how much inventory they can use within their content for advertising. We basically say, this is your platform, this is your channel, do with it what you will. But if I were you, I wouldn't start off my content with a 30-second or 15-second pre-roll because you're really just encouraging and asking the TiVo user who's already pretty familiar with fast forwarding to engage in that habit. So let's look at it in a different way. Let's throw up a sponsorship. I mean, again, none of these ideas I would say are earth-shattering, but just starting to move in that direction. I mean, I can talk a little bit more as we go through about different inventory that we have available on TiVo and what levels of what that inventory is doing to our levels of engagement. But especially in terms of pre-roll, we really just have to keep looking at ways to incorporate the advertiser's message that doesn't encourage that, that fast forwarding.
And I think what you can really do is, since I think there's this kind of pre-roll fatigue, you can really kind of leverage interactivity now. And on the mobile phone, one of the things we've been doing is, the latest thing I've been trying is when you see an integration, because reality television has a lot of integrations. When you see a product, with L'Oreal, we just did this. When you see a L'Oreal product, you get an instantaneous, you've signed up for this already, you get an instantaneous note in your phone, because it's in your hand anyway, saying, do you want to receive this from the advertiser? And it was a kind of video from L'Oreal about kind of how to do hair like you saw. And once again, huge amount of people actually signed up for this video, and it was exactly at the instantaneous moment. So I feel like it's a value add that I can get from the advertiser saying, look, these people are spending 2 minutes engaged with your product. It's not taking away from the program, et cetera. And we try to do that on broadband in a lot of ways. You can do it with pop-ups. You can do it with push to their websites. More direct response, pushing coupons, whatever. I think there's a lot of options where you can leverage interactivity versus just throwing up something that they're seeing on TV and they're just bored with and they're just going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and just that point, like if you look at it from a CPM perspective, one of the biggest challenges is as you've moved over to internet, you're not seeing the same level of CPMs. So the big challenge, therefore, is if you replicate the TV model online, okay, obviously the number of slots that consumers are prepared to accept is dramatically lower, and the CPMs are typically lower as well. So unless you start innovating, like for example you just described, you've got this massive monetization gap between your existing consumers through broadcast or cable and those who are moving online. So that's something that needs to be addressed.
One added thing here. We're all humans, and we're all subject to conditioning. I'm conditioned to accept the fact that television is free, except my cable bill. But television's free, and I have to sit through commercials. Technology is going to allow me to fast forward if I choose. We have to target the people that are not in this room if we're going to grow our businesses. And those are the ones that are in school right now, that are not here. The younger generation is growing up very quickly in a completely different mindset. And in many ways, they're being conditioned by media, but not yet fully conditioned to where we are, accepting where we just move over TV spots over the internet, as you said. So there's a gap between conditioning, which takes time, and innovation, which we can do in an instant, especially with technology. And where they meet is really where we have to draw the line on setting trends. I don't want to sound too vague here, but the focus is, with everything everyone's saying, is that we really do want to condition our users, our viewers, our audience that we're growing, to realize that if they want it for free, there has to be some sort of transaction, some sort of payment for it. Content costs money to produce. And how we figure that out, I think it's just a matter of conditioning, that if a user says, hey, for X amount, 115-second spot or a sponsored by, and then I get to my content, that's terrific. That is not a barrier, and that's not anything we should all, as business people, avoid. We have to focus on that. As a consumer, we want everything for free, don't we? But there's no way around that if you really want quality, high-cost content. So
Well,
that's the paradigm.
I would agree with you, but I would turn a little bit sideways and say that actually it behooves us to figure out what that is. It's not about necessarily habituating the consumers to the fact that you're going to get an ad, but actually crafting. I mean, we might be saying the same thing, but it's actually crafting the ad environment that won't lose them. Because we can't train the cat's out of the bag. Pandora's box is open. The consumer is going to do what it's going to do, and it's totally in control, and will choose to hang out with your content or not based on how you treat them.
Yeah, and I think some of the more recent research is encouraging. Like if you think between kind of pre-interstitial and post-roll, what's actually enjoying the most amount of success is overlays or skins, whereby you're not interrupting the consumer experience. It's enhancing the consumer experience, and that's obviously a delicate balance. But all the research I've seen of late says that's probably the best model, and very much talks to what this panel is referring to, which is a better way to integrate advertising as a more seamless consumer experience.
I love a panel that runs itself. It's so easy. But I want to come back to Todd. Talking about an execution of like the L'Oreal being very successful, but when in your position,
Right.
the marketers, are the marketers ready? Are they pounding on the doors? I mean, can you give some sense to the audience about, how close is these experiments or these models or these capabilities?
Well, I think that the one thing that is an open question, and I've been spoken to Howard and Jason about stuff like this before the last time we all got together. It actually falls to companies like myself and perhaps Capgemini to prove the value of the online video marketplace. It's sort of nominally spoken about as something that's great and it's large and it's growing, but if you actually look at it and the amount of ad dollars flowing into it, it's still fairly small, if not nascent. The models aren't exactly concrete. Everyone's trying something different. And I think that the real challenge is that you've got different containers. You've got ABC, which works with Move, which has this container model, and they're still trying to figure out how exactly that works. You have CBS with its audience network and what Quincy's doing. And I guess, Jonathan, you kind of fall in line with sort of how he does that.
Totally.
Yeah, so you have, and then you have Hulu, which just launched, and I think that most of the people in this room know that the economics of Hulu are pretty hard on Hulu. Like how that thing's going to survive with the way the revenue split is an open question. So I guess going back to your point, it has yet to be proven to show the value of online video in a way that the top tier marketers completely understand. We have to actually walk them through it. And this is sort of one of the problems I find with traditional large agency relationships is that you still are a relationship-based business. You actually have to sit down and explain what the value proposition is, and there's still a lot of education to take place in order to show the value of the marketplace. And one of the other issues is that you actually have a real inventory crunch. I mean, when people can't buy on TV and maybe they want to actually get some of the glow and buy online, even the top-tier online video sites, they actually don't have enough inventory to service. So we're still dealing with an inventory issue as well. So I guess what I would say is education is a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think that is true because even from the service providers and the other people that are involved, there's just such an enormous amount of hype into the online mystique. Whereas when I talk to ad agencies and actually content holders too, they bring that up. You know, the models. Okay, even if it worked flawlessly, I don't have an inventory to put in the spots.
And Nash, to that point, I think a lot of us here in this room tend to lose the run of ourselves. You know, if we actually look at like national and local ad sales teams, these guys have sold a pretty much similar product for 15 or 20 years. And as soon as you start trying to explain to them something that's far too complex for them, they're just simply not going to sell it. Like the incentive structure, their behaviors are largely entrenched. And so the question becomes, therefore, how do you better integrate like available online inventory with what they know? And that's a very long and protracted exercise. So it's tempting to think about 5 years ahead, but let's talk about brass tacks in terms of what you need to do to slowly move the needle in terms of a lot of the internal capabilities.
We actually don't have an inventory problem. We're actually growing so quickly and exponentially year over year. Just in video alone, our 29 stations, or actually our 13 CBS stations in each of their markets, are rolling up about 9 to 10 million video streams a month. And our syndication video is upwards of anywhere between 10 or 12 million on top of that a month. So we're breaking 20 to 22 million video streams a month of our content throughout the internet, which creates a tremendous amount of growth in inventory opportunities. That now we're taking that out to all the digital agencies and all the digital marketers as a roll-up, as well as a very focused local opportunity. Because we roll up nationally, we could sell nationally, we have all this inventory, and we also can target all of our stations specifically down to their portals and to their audiences in the local markets, which we get a very high CPM compared to national roll-up, as you all probably know. The local opportunities we have by empowering our local TV stations to distribute locally their content and focus locally and use those sales, those local feet on the ground, is really the opportunity we have to grow the business significantly as the internet becomes more of a locally focused, targeted business.
Well, if you allow me to interject for a moment here, let's take the number that you gave of about 20 to 22 million threads or streams that your channels do in what period
That's
of time?
just 13 a month. That's just 13
in a month.
And that doesn't include the network, our audience network streams or others. Just our news stations.
People tend to underestimate dramatically the technical complexity of delivering over the internet. There's a myth that the internet is easy. There's a myth that it's easy to go direct to consumer. And the reality is that it's not true. We've been doing some modeling for this, and I'm just going to give you some examples just to highlight, I think, the issue, is that if you want to stream 1 hour of television, which might be 44 minutes of a show and 16 minutes of ads and promos and other kinds of materials, that would represent 7,600 different specific SKUs or configurations of the same exact piece of content in order to meet a very small set, I assure you it's conservative at this point, of different kinds of devices and through different retailers and different mechanisms they would get it, resulting in about 24 terabytes of data storage for those 7,600 SKUs, resulting in about 800,000. This is assuming that show is a 1.5 rated show. So it's got about 1.7 million households or viewers. Let's equate it to orders just for the sake of argument. That you take that and you say only 50% of them would be streaming simultaneously in a new release window. That's 800,000 simultaneous threads for a single 1 hour show for a single channel network on a single day. And that represents, and if you're in the bandwidth business, you'll love this, 1.6 terabits of bandwidth in order to do that at the same time. Now, of course, that'd be distributed. It doesn't all happen the same way, and it's not very efficient. It's probably not exactly the way it's going to happen. But we're all underestimating dramatically the technical complexity of this. And to a certain extent, you talk about the volumes that you're talking about. They are a pale shadow of the potential of this marketplace once that infrastructure and that ability to deliver this massive amount of technical complexity becomes a reality. And so if you let me fast forward to the future a little bit, and you've got a vision of the future where it's a consumer's got 3 devices. They've got a handheld, they've got a computer, they've got a television set, and they turn it on, and the same menu pops up on all 3. And that menu knows who they are, knows what they've ordered, knows what they like, makes recommendations to them, et cetera. and they click a button to watch a show, and it shows. And maybe it's a stream from news or sports, or maybe it's a show that they ordered as part of a subscription. If you believe that is what consumers want, and you believe that end result, we have a huge, long bridging distance to gap between now and when we get to that point.
I'm depressed.
Wait, we gotta put
Wait
some
a second.
positive
That
spin
means
on
more boxes for Alcatel-Lucent.
Look,
No, I'm happy again.
just to clarify my stream comment, I mean, we're not about just repurposing everything we produce and put it on the air and stream 30-minute newscast. I mean, we realize that the internet, especially the internet, is just a different. We talk about conditioning. People expect it instantly. They're on demand. They're choosing quickly. Their attention span, especially at the office, is quick. So we've really seen an attraction to clip form. If we could put together 2 minutes or 1 minute clip, that's where we're getting most of our streams. And most of our audience, because we really do get a tremendous audience during prime time. If you put the two sine waves together, which I'm sure you've all seen, that during the day is really where our audience, our new audience, is available. And we have the ability now, as we did with the Spitzer story. We broke that on the internet instantly, beat out most of the other traditional media organizations across the country, broke that here in New York, had that online, distributed that instantly to all of our TV stations, websites, before they could break it on air. That's the power of the medium. And the opportunity of putting it in a clip form in video kind of synchronizes to the user's habit or their ability to just watch something quickly rather than sit through it and have to wait 30 minutes as a typical telecast would produce.
Yeah, with all due respect, I consider that, although valuable to you now and monetizable and et cetera, that it's an interim step to what a consumer really wants.
That's what our business today is all about. It's an interim step, as I tried to explain, that this is a needle we got to move slowly. There's a lot of hype and a lot of overhype, and I have fears. I lived through the 99 and 2000 disaster, and I see it happening again if we don't get into reality, that it isn't about a shotgun approach, that this is going to, we're going to lose viewers of television because of the internet. How do we reach these audiences in a way that we can all make a business out of it on the business side, paying them for our content, but also make it a tremendous opportunity for users to ingest the content from a content standpoint in whatever method they want to do it, whether it's on a bus, in camp, at school, at work. That's what we're about. And the baby steps are actually showing that we're on target for growing the business because we are about content and reaching an audience.
I think there's, we've been talking a lot about advertising and commercials. I think two areas that we're looking into that are also worth examining is just the concept of integration on broadband as well. The idea that, instead of having, to make it a user experience that's smoother, instead of like throwing in a 30-second ad, that, a product, Macy's wall, whatever, is integrated into the content as part of the ad spend, as well as e-commerce. I mean, people are really used to buying things on the internet. I think that there's a lot of room to grow there. We did something called, we made up terms called a shop up, where it was like the Real Housewives version, but you could, and a little thing came up and said, want to buy this woman's smock? Go to bravotv.com. And we had terrific results. It was just really an experiment. But, I think that there's something to be had in that whole e-commerce field.
And I think so as well. It's really actually, when we talk about these different media, it's not, again, as I was saying earlier, it's not one or the other. It's actually using them to ping pong back and forth through, there's a call out on TV to go online, or it's online and you're watching a clip online, and then it's actually, you can watch more of the show later here as a teaser. So it's actually consciously being aware of all the different opportunities you have, either as an advertiser or as a content owner, and leveraging each and every one of them to work with each other. I think none of it works in isolation, and none of it works the same way twice. I mean, this is also the fragmentation problem as we think about things. It's, the way that Lisa might work with her Bravo content could be radically different than what Jonathan's doing with the CBS News content in the O&Os. So each thing has its own case, and that's where things do remain highly complicated.
And I would also suggest that where there is ad revenue, where there's money to be made, the technology follows pretty quickly. We were talking about hype. Let's talk about the next one in that, which is targeting. So give a look at this. From a viewpoint of targeting, is it accelerating the CPMs in a significant and sustainable way, or is, as you get this content becoming more diffused across so many unicast streams, help the audience and me try to make some gist of that, and then I can go to you and to you and to Jason.
Well, I'm not quite sure
As
what
we
your
push the
question is.
broadband content across into
Sure.
all these unicast streams,
Right.
what's that going to do to, you might have some targeting that's supposed to bring the CPMs up, or is it that the reach becomes so low that it forces them down?
Well, I think that targeting theoretically makes everybody happier because actually you're reaching the right person in the right context. Whether targeting offsets the micro nicheification of what is happening with content consumption, I couldn't really say. I mean, I do think that we have yet to really arrive at Yahoo has behavioral targeting that hasn't really panned out. AOL is a little more effective. I mean, we saw Facebook try to do something that was taking advantage of what you knew about consumers. And I think that the targeting in terms of how you serve some video content and make sure that a relevant ad is inserted has not yet arrived, but it is coming slowly.
Any thoughts on that, Tara?
With TiVo's broadband connected audience, still small, right? So you've got only 800,000 broadband connected TiVos, and then you start looking at these specialized channels. And so, yeah, we're out in the marketplace, and a lot of these content providers are out in the marketplace selling the value of that targeted ad. But I wouldn't be prepared to answer that either in terms of, because it's just too,
I can't
it's
get
a
my
tough,
head around it.
it's
That's
tough,
why I'm asking it.
but where I can just point to a couple success stories, and again, the dollars are still small, but CNET. CNET is a channel we launched on TiVo, obviously technology news and reviews. CNET originally was selling its own advertising in that broadband delivered channel, and then after a year or so, they came back to us and they said, we can sell our advertising on TiVo, but when you combine it with the millions and millions of views we get on the web, we're not really getting an incremental value for this usage that is on the TiVo. Why don't you sell it as part of the TiVo platform? And we looked and we found Symantec and now recently BMW are both advertising on CNET because they view the value of associating their brand, especially in a TiVo environment, with that technology news, that the branded environments they create with their advertising messages on TiVo are that much more effective because the level of engagement is higher, because they're presenting some content that someone in the TiVo audience would want to see. So when you're looking at, are the audiences small? Are the numbers still small? Certainly, but we are starting to see great success in the fact that advertisers are seeming to want to reach those niche audiences.
Just to add to that, I think there's a massive gulf between kind of concept and reality of targeting. We've seen some examples there, but the dirty word in the room that no one ever will admit to is scale. And what I mean by scale is if you think about whether it be contextual, behavioral, demographic, psychographic, there's all these different ways to cut the data. But at the end of the day, if you're a provider who simply doesn't have enough scale in terms of inventory, okay, you very rapidly run out of people. There are only so many Irish guys in New York, age 34, who like Wham from the 80s. It could be less than one. And so therefore, it's the CPMs are massive, but you haven't got the numbers, and that's very difficult to sell to an ad agency or an advertiser. So the premise, therefore, becomes, and what we're seeing in the marketplace is this concept of ad networks. Reuters is a great example with glam.com. And what we're going to see, I think, is a lot of mid-tier players, so those with kind of 10 to 30 million uniques, increasingly looking to bundle up their available inventory. So you've got the big four, so Google, AOL, MSN, and Yahoo, have that scale whereby targeting is a reality. And you guys may have heard earlier Canoe. Canoe was in the New York Times on Monday. A large premise of Canoe is less about all the wonderful things you can do with interactive advertising and more about scale. If I can now scale up to offer a sufficient number of ad units to my ad agencies, that therefore becomes a kind of an important model, and that's probably the way the market's going to go.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're also challenged as an industry to really have a common and reliable measurement system for our advertisers. Television, we rely on a single source, but the internet has many. And because we're not on a common platform, or even one or two, there are too many numbers out there, and it's very hard to really build a business off of behavioral today and targeted, but it's coming. There's no doubt about it, and we should plan for it. We actually coincidentally have a major announcement on Monday. I'm going to roll something out I can't announce here that is specifically targeted to this targeted niche, not behavioral, but it's a combination of syndication and advertising strategy to actually reach specific audiences for our marketers and for our sponsors. That's what they want. They want to know who their audience is, and they want them to be associated with their brand. They want transactions. And that's what we're experimenting with, as well as rolling out products now that are targeted specific. We can get the demographics, and that's in essence what we can sell to our marketers. But whether it is a person who is on a sports site or specifically into baseball, or someone that is literally into politics, or someone that is into a community site centered around cooking, that's where this business is headed, and where the power is for us to get significant CPMs that could outweigh large audiences, and having to blast large audiences and have a much smaller but niche audience to get a much higher CPM. And that's what we are working on now.
Okay. So I want to touch base on the metrics again. So when you're talking to brand marketers,
Right.
Are they fixation on ROI? Is that stifling creativity?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I do is actually so new that we actually really don't look at ROI that much. But I would say that actually there is a real issue in the video marketplace, like Jonathan's saying, for actual measurement. I mean, Jeff Zucker spoke earlier this year and was saying that there's this issue of whether we're trading analog dollars for digital pennies. And part of what comes up around that is that actually we don't have a system. It goes back to trying to talk about the value of the online video marketplace. We don't actually have a common language which allows, and it gets back to what Jason was also saying about training systems. We don't have a common language which allows the media buyer of today to take a look at television and say, okay, this is what I'm getting here, then take a look at online and go, okay, I totally get the value as I look at these two different things. And so there is a measurement issue when you are looking at the internet in terms of how do you translate the value across it.
There's also a basic process and campaign management issue within almost all the advertisers that we work with. They know that they have to go to a portfolio management approach, whereas they used to be more focused on a specific channel or specific media. Now they have to move toward an understanding of demographics over a large set of potential different channels, platforms, delivery platforms, any kind of media. They don't generally have the right focus or the right tools to do that work. It's much harder. I mean, it ends up with what you were just saying. But also on the other side of things, on the media side, the companies who sell the ad inventory, they also don't have a solid and comprehensive and understandable picture of their inventory and how it spreads across all of their properties and how you would reach a specific demographic using that. I mean, individuals go out and they get that information and they present it in a sales pitch, but unfortunately it's not automated enough. It takes a lot of work to figure it out, and I think that's a big, and going back to your measurement issue as well, put all of that together and you end up with a situation where a lot of people are struggling to find the best way to go to market.
Very, very true.
Okay. Well, let's go on to another one here. It's kind of a technology thing, but there's been a lot of discussion about the Slingbox-like capabilities and how that would affect not only post and pre-rolls, but also just the basic content holders' view on that. So maybe I can go back down there to Lisa and have any feelings about Slingbox?
I don't think I officially have any. You're putting me in a slightly awkward position.
Okay.
I have a
We don't
personal
wanna
opinion
do
on
that.
Slingbox, but
Okay.
I think the lawyers at NBC have very strong feelings about it.
Okay. And anything from you, Jonathan? I'll keep digging.
Look, I'll speak as a consumer. I mean, I'm not pushing Sling. I love Sling for the fact that I can be out of market and I can control my television in my market. I got two boys down in Florida. They love to watch Ranger games and Knick games, and they can watch it using Sling. And I'm actually paying one bill in New York. I mean, that's the power of the Slingbox to the consumer. But I'm just speaking as a consumer, not professional, but it's all right.
Certainly something that I'd actually...
Yeah, write that on the card and for the consumer.
Right.
Certainly in the previous sessions, Shelley Palmer was talking about the fact that most of the old media, traditional media, has come to the party quite late, and it actually seems to have gotten away with it. And one of the upsides of broadcasting...
I disagree with it.
Of course.
I really do. That's the problem. And Les said it this morning, if any of you were there, that we have a really bad rap as media company. Okay, it's a bad rap. We've been in this space a long time. We have a lot of shareholders. I'm not talking about Wall Street shareholders, but just a lot of shareholders from content providers, producers, advertisers. It affects our economy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of people, and we have been in this space a very long time. It's just, we just don't want to. It's not a shotgun approach to us. That's
absolutely.
all.
Where I was going to go.
I love Shelley. Trust me, I love Shelley.
Where I was going to go is, I think at the end of the day, to Jonathan's point, is that there's a massively higher levels of complexity in the video and broadcast space than there was, say, for example, compared to music. Like if you look at what happened with the monetization gap in music, the cat's out of the bag. Okay, we talked before about the younger demos. These digital natives they've grown up not paying for music, and the massive challenge, therefore, from a behavioral perspective is, as they become accustomed to not paying for video content, it becomes very difficult to change those behaviors. And those behaviors affect the mainstream very quickly, whether it be kind of IM or texting or internet usage. Often the digital natives are the leads in terms of what becomes standardized behavior several years down. And so the Slingbox and other models are examples whereby you can't not think about them. And even if it's only a small percentage now, that tends to play out over time. So thinking about how those may affect the mainstream in 2 or 3 years hence is a massive area where companies like Viacom, companies like News Corp are thinking now, because it affects the revenues further down the line.
Right, and it's all a food chain.
Yeah.
Somewhere, someone's going to pay.
Exactly.
Somewhere, whether it's the distribution provider, the technology, or the content, or advertising, or transactional. Someone's going to pay in that food chain, and that's...
Well, and yet, today, and I'm sorry to be provocative yet again, but the Slingbox, the TiVo, and iTunes are really best in the market for Slingbox, TiVo, and iTunes. They support those business models of selling those equipment or that kind of software within a certain closed environment. But they're not necessarily good for content creators. The money doesn't flow down the supply chain. It's not true that that right now that works. And that breakage is something that needs to be fixed, obviously, but I would look at them as something that's extremely indicative of what consumers actually want. And the thing that's important about it is not so much whether they're going to fit into the long-term future supply chain of digital media, but more, what do they indicate about how consumers want to consume media? That's what's important.
Yeah, and just to lend, I guess, kind of credence to that argument as well, is I think a lot of the music majors, again, had a similar argument. Well, someone's going to have to pay for this. But at the end of the day, you're limiting your horizon if you think about it's just about music or it's just about video. At the end of the day, it's media, it's entertainment. And if people don't get the music choices that they want, they'll go look to video, they'll go to gaming. So at the end of the day, it isn't a kind of an internally consistent model. People will spend their time elsewhere if they don't like the models that are available to them.
Very much so. I wanted to get at least touch on the data mining and privacy policy discussion, just because there was a lot of that talked about this morning. And there's also a great company down there, ChoiceStream, that talks about aggregating that to give you preference engines. Anybody want to touch on that one? No volunteers for that. Okay. I got another page, though. What should the audience take away from this panel? So why don't we start with Jason and work our way back? A couple minutes on that, and then I think we'll have just a little bit of time left over for maybe a couple Q&As.
Sure. I think for me, a couple of major takeaways. One is around the fact, I think it's great where we are as a panel and great where we are as a room in terms of kind of talking about 3-5 years from hence. I think that's very worthwhile to think through the likely scenarios. But I think it's also massively important to keep your eye on the consumer. At the end of the day, you can argue content, experience, all these things are king. But consumer is king. And really, I think it's tempting to believe that things will work themselves out. And I think the upside of broadcasters and a lot of the major media companies is they're a lot less complacent than what we've observed in the music space. But at the end of the day, if you're not very much keeping your eye on the consumer and certainly for the younger demos as well, about how they're interacting with devices, with screens, with content in terms of interaction. If your eye isn't there, you're going to miss the ball. So that would certainly be my major watch out.
To you, Lisa, next.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jason. To me, it's all about the user experience. I was at a ski vacation recently, and you know, it was all about this family and the Xbox. I mean, the Xbox is basically where they watch TV, it's where they play games, and it's their computer. So that really use it, and it's just the ease of use. It's easy for them to use. So as we look forward, as what we want to do at Bravo, I try to think of how I can get the audience engaged. And when I look at advertisers, I'm particularly interested in advertisers who help us get research, because that's one of the hardest things. A lot of the stuff is still throw it up against the wall spaghetti, and I kind of look at that 92% rate and I try to interpret what that actually means. So, the more research and data I can get, the better, and that's really going to give me an indication of, how the user is liking that, and I'm going to absolutely follow their lead.
Well, I think there's a lot of things to take out of this panel, and I think one of the interesting things is that content creators, and we have to give them their due, so I will, have to respond to the current environment, have to monetize as best they can, have to use the current technologies as best they can, and yet what we're looking at is still a relatively early stage of the development of the digital media world, and that there's a huge amount of opportunity and growth for content creators in the future, and yet there's an enormous gap between what a content creator needs to do and what an end consumer needs to receive and how they want to consume that media. And until we fill that gap a little bit better, a lot of the things that the content creators would like to do and the advertisers would like to do aren't going to be as possible as we'd like. And so many things we do just seem like a compromise, I think, and we're doing the best we can within the environment. Next is that I'm not sure that we should be focusing on broadband anymore. Broadband is a technology for communications, and I'm not sure that it's as important as bandwidth is, and how you deliver a single stream of potential digital media to an end consumer is more important than the concept of multiplexing on broadband. Next is I don't think that the internet is a channel, and I don't think we should look at it as that, but more as a platform for delivering that same stream. And lastly, and I said it before, but I just want to emphasize it again because I think it's the most important thing that we all have to deal with in the next many years, is that the technical complexity and the sizing, the scale, as you mentioned before, of getting from here to there is pretty mammoth. And a lot of large companies and large capabilities need to be brought to bear in order to enable this new digital media world.
I did a long stint at ABC. It was bought by Cap Cities and then bought by Disney. And the most profound moment, I think, in my career at the time was when Disney bought ABC, and I had the opportunity to meet with some of the Disney Imagineering folks and some of the people in terms of where is the business going and what opportunities we have, bandwidth, interactive, enhanced television we started. One of the things that one of the engineers that was there an older guy, and he knew Walt Disney, and he recalled a story that I'll probably not be able to quote perfectly, but it's very interesting, and what it did is it actually set the path for where I think our business needs to go. He had designed and built the brilliant Disney World, and I don't even think he lived to see it, but he had a design concept of building Disney World, and all his engineers had built models of what it would look like. And one of the engineers had said, well, then what we're going to do is so people can go from the food court over to this pavilion and then get over here to Mickey Mouse, and then we're going to have this. We'll have these paths, and we'll put concrete paths along here and roll it out and have it come here so it's easy for them to access each point. He said, no. He said, don't put any paths. Don't put any pavement. Just put grass. And after 6 months, wherever the paths are, matted down on the grass, that's where you put the paths. It reminds me of the kid who says, the tires, let the tires out on the truck that's stuck under the bridge. That for me was really a profound moment that it's so simple. It is exactly what Jason was saying. I mean, if we just listen, I have young kids, and I clearly listen to them all the time. You really got to follow the consumer. We can't invent it. And I don't want to sound arrogant here that our content is what it's all about. But we do know the consumer at the end of the day does want quality content ingested in terms of everything they do want to. We didn't even touch upon user-generated content, which is a major initiative for us, and the sharing of that. But that's part of following the consumer that'll help drive our business. And how we monetize that is just part of the economics of where we are. So I want to share.
I would say at TiVo, one thing we've always been focused on is user experience. And so I think to your point earlier that TiVo is something that the consumer wanted. Yes, we certainly have been a friend of the consumer. But yes, we've also been a foe of the networks and advertisers. And so as you look at where things are today, though, that's changing drastically, because whether you fast forwarded through commercials before the technology by getting up and going to the kitchen when the commercials came on, or today, you're fast forwarding with your DVR, and in 2 years, I think the market's supposed to be at something like 50 million DVRs, whether it's TiVo or from your cable company or your satellite company. But we absolutely have to focus on what consumers want. And so in a world that is going to continue to deliver consumers what they want and give them that flexibility, choice, and control and ability to turn off what they don't want, we just have to continue to look for ways to make the advertising or deliver the advertising that they're going to want to view, and also really know as a content owner, you're right, the content owners are going to need to get paid. Of course they are. So if I were a content owner, I would be most focused on, what makes most sense? How do consumers most want to see my content? Am I really delivering content that someone's going to want to pay for potentially on one device and they can watch it for free on another? There's so many strategies out there today. I think that the content companies that are the smartest, really, including CBS at the head of it, forefront of it, are the companies that really aren't afraid to try the new models and to really experiment with whether it's advertising or paid content, the different platforms and the different models with those platforms.
I'll just say all of the above, no. But I think that as we're talking about this, it is very much the consumer in charge. But one of the things we haven't touched on as we talk about listening to the consumer, I mean, we do have this incredible record now through blogs and the way that people communicate and the entire world of social media. Everyone is talking about exactly what they want, and we have the opportunity, and this is something we tell our marketing clients all the time, listen to the conversation. I mean, the best thing about the internet is it actually has a direct record of everything you need to know about your content or your brand, and they're telling it to you directly. Like if Lisa's looking for more research, she can probably find in the blogs around Bravo whether they like this or not. And I think that is something that I would actually say we didn't really touch on, but it is a time of listening, and one of the best things you can do is actually listen directly to the consumer who is shouting at the top of their lungs, whether it's through their activity or actually writing it and sharing it with each other, that this is what they want and this is what they would really like to have. And then on top of that, I would say that in this fragmentation that we've been talking about, there is opportunity. I mean, you can certainly say the sky is falling, and as you look at a mass audience that you once had with television and now it's become fragmented to the point where you can't recognize which niche is which, there's actually tremendous opportunity in figuring out ways to aggregate those audiences. And we work very hard on doing that for our clients in terms of saying you can still reach an audience and actually reach them in a more engaged way. So I think that it's an incredible time to be participating in the world of content and advertising.
Okay. So we have a whole 12 minutes. Would the audience like to do some Q&A? Anybody have some questions? Oh, wait, you're an analyst. Forget it.
Well, I was shocked that nobody wanted to answer the privacy question, but when you were talking about measuring the ability to go back to your clients and give them some credible numbers that are we all determined are crazy because nothing's consistent. Privacy has to come into those conversations you guys are having behind closed doors. And a lot of my clients are very marginal. We call it the creep show factor. I mean, we think it's a little creepy sometimes how those things are being measured. However, generationally speaking, my daughter, who's in college, an engineering student, seemed to embrace people getting into her psyche and into her world a little bit more because she sees a benefit of what can be offered to her.
Yeah, no,
Well, I didn't want to answer because I didn't want to open up a whole can of worms.
here we go.
But no, the fact is that we give our consumers choice, and we absolutely want that information, and we give an opt-in opportunity for them to give that information if indeed it's clear that it's going to be shared with a marketer or shared in a contest, that these rules. But we must protect consumers, obviously, and the privacy issue behind it. But as long as it's opt-in and the consumer is choosing to give that information.
Transparency.
Yes, the
Yeah, no,
transparency has to be there. We must protect the consumers.
To that point, there's a difference between opt-in and transparency. Like, I think the Facebook Beacon example is a great example, an issue whereby it was opt-in, but it wasn't transparent to the consumers. It was much harder
No,
to
I mean,
opt out.
it was opt-out.
Exactly.
It was in
Right.
no ways out.
Default.
Exactly.
It was sort of like, whoops, oh, you didn't see that, sorry.
You silly you, exactly. And so you need to be really, really careful, particularly now as targeting kind of goes from, it's happening right now. And I think the examples that we've seen certainly in Europe and Asia with a lot of the research that Capgemini has done is around the fact if you are transparent, mobile phones is a great example. Through your mobile phone, they know way more about you. If you're transparent about that and they see the benefit, whether that be more relevant programming, more relevant advertising, or subsidized programming, that's a big benefit, but you need to be upfront about it.
I don't know why you're targeting the internet and worrying about it. I don't know whether anybody in this room has ever read what gets sent in the mail to you about your credit card. They've changed the rates. But then again, if you read the small print, you have to write a letter to opt out of them sharing any of the companies they own, anything about you that they have. So that bank could own 16 different businesses, and they can, because you didn't opt out, share that information. So, I think it's a systemic problem in our world. But the internet's so easy because it's just a click and an opt in or opt out, and whether it's default or whether you're transparent, we deal with these issues in all of our businesses.
Yeah, we've done some very interesting work as well in identifying the number of sources of private information that individuals present in the marketplace in general. What we're talking about in terms of media is just a small drop in the bucket. I mean, privacy is a much bigger issue that goes way beyond media.
Thank you.
And I think I can second you're talking about your daughter, because we had done a bunch of studies on it, and we found the generational difference. The younger generations just didn't care.
She embraces it.
Yeah.
Her whole
So just,
social network.
and if indeed, as we're looking towards extending into that market itself demographically, with all these new devices and new schemes and content, hey, maybe it'll solve itself to some great extent. Probably the bigger fear would be that you have lopsided policies that then everybody loses on that. But you're going to jump in there, Lisa? Oh, okay.
No.
The other precedent, though, is just self-regulation is invariably better than broader regulation. I think it's reaching the point whereby a sufficient number of people become vocal. You essentially have SEC regulation. I think there's certainly pros and cons to that. But I think if us as an industry are proactive essentially in defining those standards and consumers are bought in, that's a much better way to find a balance that works for everyone.
And there's also even the case of who actually owns that consumer. I mean, who's responsible for it all, and that's not clearly defined as well.
With the parallel trends of user-generated content and broadband distribution, are any of you looking at ways to make it easier for your viewers to, in a way, mash up some of your programming for distribution? So in other words, they're doing it anyway. Someone takes a clip from Project Runway, just wants to take a 30, 45-second clip of it, email it out to their friends, perhaps with your branding, with your condoning it, maybe even with advertising. Are any of you looking at models like that for distributing and mashing up the content?
We've done mashups and that you can distribute. They've been kind of popular, not incredibly popular. So we haven't pursued it heavily just because this consumer spoke. That's not to say over time it won't change.
Yeah, I agree that there's a market for people to consume that content, but in terms of producing it, that's a small niche. People who are in that corner. But we are. I mean, we as a company, we do have, and as I said, we're I don't want to get into it, but we're in the user-generated content planning and rolling out with products to encourage users to share content with us and interact between broadcast and online. So we can use user-generated content, whether it's news or whatever, and use it to put it on in broadcast. But that gets back to our plan for workflow. How do you make that easy for the consumer, speed to platform, and timely?
next one. Call it a day. Had enough of the moderator?
And for everyone.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you all for coming. Hope
Thank
it was
you.
helpful. Thanks, panel. You know,